Welcome back to Bear Witness. The Bears' brash flirting with this move to Indiana honestly makes my blood boil. Just yesterday, the green light was unanimously given in Indiana to create the Northwest Indiana Stadium Authority, which is a local government body that essentially just gives the power to them to make this project happen. So, today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out all the reasons why this cannot be allowed to happen. Plus, I'm also then going to look into some actual team news and moves, um, starting with off-season needs and then going into actual roster moves that I would make going into the 2026 off-season. So let's get straight into it. This has seriously riled me up. That there is the image of or theoretical rendition of the plan that Indiana State has for a Bears stadium. Um, I just I just despise this idea on so many fronts. Um, we really, I think, need to band together as Bears fans to make sure that this doesn't happen because I feel like it's just going to rip the soul out of the club. And I'll get into some of the reasons why now. Firstly, political games and money should not destroy culture and heritage. This whole thing seems to be about tax incentives and government financial aid in actually building a new stadium. I'm not against building a new stadium per se, although I don't really see why we can't just invest some of that money in renovating Soldier Field. Soldier Field's a stadium with loads of history, and its location is iconic. And I think there's no real need to move. Um, so I would rather we just did a renovation, to be honest. But this whole thing being about money when we're talking about billionaires and government, I think is ridiculous. Honestly, ridiculous. And it's just going to be the fans and the culture which is destroyed, which just makes me so sad. Um, History cannot be bought. You can't go anywhere and just throw money at something and make it historic. It's just time does that. It takes 100 years for something to be 100 years old. You can't you can't manufacture history. And the Bears are one of the, if not the most, in my opinion, the most storied and historic franchise in the NFL. We have to stay where our roots are. We have to maintain that culture and the what makes us the Bears. We have to keep that together. Um, Everything about moving state, and although it's going to be very close to the state line, it's still going to cross the state line into Indiana from Illinois. And that idea sickens me. It should not, we should not be moving to a different state. Like, are we going to call ourselves we won't be in Chicago. We're going to be calling ourselves the Indiana Bears. And what is that? That can't happen. It can't happen. This is just a bad look for the franchise, which is a franchise which is on the way up for the first time in a long time. We're finally feeling positive about our team and the direction that we're going for the first time in probably about 10, 20 years, maybe even. Um, it's it it really just saddens me because we could be looking and thinking about the development of Caleb or off-season additions, which I am going to get into because I want to try and stay positive. Um, but we could be doing all this speculation and getting excited and looking ahead to the next season. But instead, we're stuck in this battle for the heart and soul of our team and our franchise. It just makes me really sad. I'm intrigued to as to what people from Chicago and sort of raised in that area and know the political situation even more than me because I've had to do a lot of research on the political history of this situation and just Chicago in general to try and get a better idea of what's actually happening here because like from an outside perspective, obviously living in London and having been in England all my life, that I've not really been exposed to that kind of history. And when you actually look into what has been going on for an extended period of time with the Bears and the state of Illinois and Chicago politics in general, I'm really sort of curious to know how people that live in it every single day feel, because it can't be something that's fun to be a part of. Like every time you think about your political system, it's just a depressive state. Um, so anyway, back to the Bears. I also sort of off the back of this and outside of the situation with moving the franchise, the stadium in general. If we're going to move to a new stadium, who asked for a dome? Who asked for a dome? We love bear weather. We want to be in the cold. We want to be in the Lake Michigan wind. We want to be having icicles growing off of growing off of our beards and off of our hair and off of our taking our shirts off and gritting our teeth. That's where we want to be. We don't want to be in some cushy dome where in the middle of the winter you're playing on a pristine pitch. And no, screw that. I want to be playing in the snow and the icy wind. The, the NFL is, as a league in general, I think I think it's got the biggest home advantage in any sport, because you go to any place in America. The US is huge. You go to any place where like sort of a reasonable distance away from somewhere else, and you've got completely different conditions. The There is nothing like in any other sport a team that trains and plays in Miami or California going into a Chicago or a Buffalo or a Philadelphia. There's nothing to replace that, and it's a real advantage for the Bears to be able to play in that weather all the time, know what it's like, acclimatize to it, and then when it comes to playoff time, being in there and being able to go, you know what, we're way more ready for this than you. We're way more up for this than you. You're coming from your sunshine state down here to Chicago, and we're gonna bash your teeth in the icy cold winter. What's not to love about that? That's what the NFL's built off. It's special teams playing in adverse conditions, uh, stepping up and becoming iconic players, making iconic moments happen. Uh, I I do not, under any circumstances, want a dome. I I think it's stupid. Anyway, on to the next point. Is it all just a bluff? So I watched a video this morning of the governor of Illinois talking about how they've had positive conversations with the Bears in the last few days, and they were surprised that this statement's come out about the plans being approved in Indiana, and it just sort of went to reaffirm my thought that it probably is a bluff. Um, it just seems like a good leverage to have to go to the negotiating table with the state of Illinois. And look, I know that's the political game you have to play, but if that is the case, it's really sort of stressing out the fan base and bringing, as I've mentioned already, bad vibes around a franchise which has been feeling really good. So I'm curious to know what other people think, but I feel like it's a bluff and a deal will get done in Illinois. I hope that's the case because I do not, under any circumstances, want this to happen. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what's on the cards in the future. Um, Another thing, I don't think this is going to happen. To be honest, I think this could go on and on and on. But I would I would like this to be squashed before minicamp, because I would just want the focus in the building to be all on the team. I don't want to have all this rubbish around stuff that is really important and will take people's attention, but at the same time, it's not important in terms of what we want to be talking about. It's the last thing that we want to be talking about as fans. We want to be talking about year two Colston Loveland, Caleb Williams' second year in under Ben Johnson, and can he develop himself to get some of this more simple stuff right? These are all the talking points that we want to be talking about, and we want to be looking at whoever we pick up in the draft. And there's so many interesting talking points to be had. We don't need to add this just depressing rubbish into the mix. It's yeah, the only saving grace in this whole situation is that I feel like it's a bluff, but I want it sorted quickly and I want it sorted in a way that keeps the franchise's soul together. Anyway, let's get into some of these off-season needs because I want to start looking ahead to next year and what we should be doing, what Ryan Poles should be doing to set us up for success next year. Um, this first off-season need, I don't think it's rocket science. Everybody who watches not just the Bears but the NFL knows that the Chicago Bears need an edge. Um, it's not rocket science. We expect to have a very good offense next year, and if we're going to be up in games and needing to defend against must-pass situations for the opposing offense, you need to have somebody that can go and get that quarterback, especially in big games where you're playing against good offenses with better offensive lines and better quarterbacks. You need to be able to hurry up their progressions and get them off sequence because I can see a world where if we don't address this, which I do think we will, but if we don't address this, we're going to be in very frustrating situations where we can't get away from teams and start using that run game, which is so effective as a clock drainer. That's something which really excites me about next year is can we become a team that takes over games, grabs games by the scruff of the neck, gets up, runs the ball, stops the opposition. That is something which I really think we can be, but we need to address edge first. Last year we were 25th ranked pass rush in the NFL. Just not good enough. You need to be if we're going to have like a top 5 offense, which I think we can with Ben Johnson and Caleb and all the weapons we have on the offense, you don't need to have like a top 10 defense. You just need to be like a middling. If we can get in at that 16 to 12 range, which I think we have potential to do, we can be a real threat in the NFL. We just need to address not only this, obviously, but the interior as well. The interior the interior was for me the biggest problem of last year because the defense was just bad all around. I know we got a lot of interceptions and takeaways, but the defense was bad, and this is why. 31st ranked run defense in the NFL in 2025. This is also a reason why I think we just got passed on so much. Teams running the ball, running the ball, running the ball with success. You have to collapse the defense, which we ended up doing. Our linebackers were very tight. Our back four was coming very tight, and in the end, that just means that teams can pass all over you. A lot of that as well was not helped by the amount of man coverage we played, but I hope that we've learned our lessons from that, and if we can get some sort of run stopping as well as pass rush, all of a sudden that zone defense, which got so many takeaways, I think could be really effective, especially with Al Harris managing the backfield. So these two are my premium draft pick selections. I don't care which order it's done in because I think we've got some talent on the edge in Montez Sweat. I think he can be good if he's paired with somebody who can also go and get the QB. So as long as we address these two and I will get into how I would address them in the next segment. But as long as we address these two with our first two draft picks, I'm happy. Next up, we've got linebacker. So I think Tremaine Edmonds should be cut. He's going to save us about 15 million on the cap, and ultimately his performance just was not good enough. He had like a PFF grade of 57.5 or something like that, close to that, which is just not good enough. And for the 17.5 million that he's going to cost us next year, it just can't be justified. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be cut, and I certainly would cut him, which will free up some money. But it also means that we're quite tight at linebacker, and we will definitely need to bolster the linebacker room, whether that's with somebody you can pick up in free agency who you like, not a big money signing. I don't think we need a premium linebacker to come in, but if you can pick up somebody who is a few million quid who you like their value, or third or fourth round pick, I quite like that. So I think it needs to be addressed, and I think it will be again. I think some of the noises that you hear around the franchise makes me think that this likely will be added to this off season. But yeah, we'll see to what extent we add to it. Next up is safety. So there's a lot of noise that Brisker is going to be out or on his way out. I expect Kevin Byard to stay, which does help the safety room, and make it's also just less of a priority position in terms of like positional value. But one thing I will say is that I do want to try and keep as much of the chemistry and production of the group of players that we had last year, certainly in the secondary. I want to keep that this year. I do think it's important, certainly chemistry in the back end. Um, so we just need to maintain that production, and it's something that I am going to talk about in the next segment. But I would like to keep Brisket and Bayard. I think we can afford it. I've been running the numbers on Spot Track, and we can afford to keep both without massively mortgaging the future. So I think that's something that we should certainly look to do. But if Brisket does go, which is the noise that's coming out of the club, it's something that we need to address with maybe like a fourth round pick, something like that, if you can find some value in there. Last but not least, I've got left tackle here, and it's not out of a lack of belief in Aussie Tripillo, it's about Aussie Tripillo's injury. I do like Aussie Tripillo. He certainly added to our offensive line last year, and I think he was good. And I think he gelled well with the rest of the senior players that are on that line. But at the end of the day, the Aussie Tripillo injury is concerning, not necessarily because I don't think he's going to come back to what he was. It's just, I would just like some depth in there because he's going to miss time next year. Um, I'm not saying premium pick. I'm just saying if you can get somebody in like a veteran on a cheap deal, or use one of the later picks on somebody, maybe just like a big bodied guy who might develop a little bit technically, I think that's the kind of move we should be making. Last but not least, I'm going to be looking at the roster moves that I would be making off the back of those needs that I discussed in order to set us up best for next year. I had to engage my inner Ryan Poles and opened up Spot Track to get some of these contract numbers and salary numbers for all of these players, which is exhausting to try and sort of sift through on my own. So very grateful to have that tool available. And it actually surprised me the amount of stuff that I was able to do. I thought we would be pretty limited given the contract structures for a few of these guys, but um, as it as it turns out, there's a bit more room for manoeuvre than perhaps certainly I and perhaps anybody else thought as well. Um, One thing straight off the bat that that I don't like doing is I don't like kicking the can down the road, certainly with players that I don't believe in. So just bear that in mind when it comes to some of these moves. Firstly, I'm going to get into the cut trade. So cut Tremaine Edmonds, cut Cairo Santos, and Bajent. I like Bajent, but I have to be honest. Tyson Bajent, I don't think he's ever going to really play, and there's no real point in keeping him along if somebody's willing to offer us a pick for him, which is what's rumored for the Cardinals. If that does happen, I'm happy to give them a sixth-round pick because we live and die with Caleb at the end of the day. Like if Tyson Bajent's having to fill in, we're not going to be pushing for the Super Bowl. So I'm happy to let him walk and pick up some extra salary cap space. DJ Moore, I've sent him to the Titans for a third and a fifth this year. It's more just redistributing our, not just our salary, but our resource. I think offensively we've got enough. I like DJ Moore, so it's not a personal thing about him. I know there was a lot of questions about his commitment on some of these plays, certainly the one that ended our season last year. But I like DJ Moore. He's given us a lot of good moments. I just think in terms of look, it's a brutal league. It's a salary cap league. You have to make the most of what you've got. I would be looking to trade him somewhere that wants to support a QB like the Titans. I think a third and a fifth. That's what I've gone for. I was hoping to try and get a second for him, but I just feel like he's not as valuable as a second. Certainly, the Titans' second round pick is very high. So I would, if I was the Titans, I wouldn't be looking to give that one up. But a third and a fifth sort of bridges the gap between a second and a third. That's what I've gone for that. And that gives us a lot of room. I'll get into later what I want to do with those picks, but that gives us a lot of room to maneuver. Restructure. 3 restructures. Montez Sweat, Joe Tooney, and Jalen Johnson. These guys are all on reasonably big contracts. Certainly some of the biggest contracts on the Bears at the moment. I'd be looking to restructure those guys because when you restructure somebody, you take their salary now and turn it into signing bonus, which is paid out across future years. So essentially, you get to reduce their salary cap hit right now in return for paying them guaranteed money right now. It's a good trade for both for both parties. It's a good trade for us because it means that we can get more players in the door under the salary cap, and at the same time, the players get to turn their salary into guaranteed money. Now, where this falls down, and as I touched on earlier, is if you restructure players just for the sake of reopening cap space. I'm only looking to restructure players for cap space if I know that I want to keep that player for the duration of their contract. Like turning that contract into guaranteed money for Joe Tooney, that's a no-brainer. I'm more than happy to keep him for the rest of his contract. There's no thoughts in my mind at all that I'm going to be thinking we should be cutting Joe Tooney. So keeping him on a restructured contract where we've just turned more of his money into guaranteed money, paid him that bonus this year, and then kicked some of the salary cap hit down the road, I'm more than happy to do that. Montez Sweat, I do believe in Montez Sweat if he gets somebody, like if he gets a number 1 pass rusher with him. And Jalen Johnson, I think he was playing injured last year. He certainly spent some time out of the team, and I think the rest of the time that he was in the team, he was still a bit hobbled. So I do believe in Jalen Johnson, and I think that restructuring him, I don't think is that much of a risk to open up some salary cap this year. Resign. There will obviously be more resigns than this, but I'm kind of looking at some of the key ones. Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker, I want to resign both of these guys. I want to keep the chemistry on the back end, which end up with the most takeaways this year in the NFL. I want to keep them around. Jaquan Brisker showed in that game against the Rams what he could do. He was sensational in that game. I think he was absolutely fantastic. And Kevin Byard was just a stalwart in our defense all year. Super, super keen to keep him. I think he's the priority this year. He will be re-signed. The other two guys, they're not high salary cap guys. I've just looked through the list of everybody, with like CJ Gardner Johnson and people like that, and I'm sure we'll keep more than just these four guys. But I really like Devin Duvernay and what he offers on special teams. I think we should be looking to keep him. And DeMarco Jackson, I don't think he's going to get that much conversation at all on the Bears. Maybe ever. But I really like him. Every time he steps in, I think, yeah, he played well there. He did his job. And I would just really like to keep a guy like that in the building. So what does this all mean in terms of the year, or setting up for the year as a whole? So from Spot Track, the estimated cap space saving is, well, the estimated cap space that we're going to have is $55 million. And we would also, from these, gain a third, a fifth, and a sixth. And what I would like to do with those picks that we gained is move up in the second round and try and pick up somebody who maybe falls out of these D linemen, so that we can get two, not blue chippers, but two premium D linemen. If you can get two rookie D linemen to go into your team and make an impact, you don't need to go and splash on a massive free agent or a massive trade, giving up a load of picks. I think picks are super valuable, and using draft picks effectively. Bear in mind, Ryan Poles has been reasonably good drafting defensively, and Ben Johnson's drafting from Detroit and his first year in Chicago on the offensive side of the ball has been really, really good. So I really like the setup that we've got in terms of picking up players in the draft. I don't think we should be looking to then shift those assets, which can turn into really valuable playmakers for the team, in order for us to pick up somebody who's A, going to cost a lot more salary cap wise, and B, it's a bit of a, I don't know, it's a bit of a personal preference, but I just like players that we draft. When you draft somebody to your organization, I just have more of an affinity towards those players. So that would be my preference. But hey ho, let me know what you guys think of that, and any moves that you might make. So that's all for this week's edition of Bear Witness. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Is the move to Indiana actually going to happen, or is it all just a bluff? What is our biggest area of need? And what would you do this off-season? As always, thank you for listening. Stay safe and bear witness.